Henny Youngman, affectionately known as the king of the one-liners, was a comedian whose career was a testament to the timeless power of humor. Born in an era when vaudeville reigned supreme and living through the seismic shifts of the entertainment industry, Youngman's quips and rapid-fire delivery transcended generations. His jokes were often deceptively simple but struck a chord with audiences, earning him a place in the pantheon of comedic legends. However, behind the curtain of laughter, Youngman's life was interwoven with personal struggles, heartaches, and a relentless commitment to his craft that continued until his final days. Henny Youngman's story begins in an unlikely place for an American comedy icon, Liverpool, England. Born on March 16, 1906, to Russian Jewish immigrants, Henry Youngman's early life was defined by movement and adaptation. His parents, struggling to find a better life, soon emigrated to the United States, settling in the vibrant and bustling borough of Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn in the early 20th century was a melting pot of cultures, with streets alive with the sounds of different languages and the hustle of immigrant life. It was in this environment that Youngman's wit and observational humor began to take shape. As a young boy, Henry, soon to be known as Henny, was drawn to the world of entertainment, though his initial passion was music, not comedy. He learned to play the violin, an instrument that would later become a signature prop in his act. Youngman's violin was more than just a tool for making music, it became a symbol of his ability to blend humor and melody, a unique fusion that set him apart from his peers. But Brooklyn was not just a backdrop to Youngman's formative years, it was a crucible that forged his comedic sensibilities. The borough was a breeding ground for entertainers, and Youngman quickly found himself immersed in a world of vaudeville shows, street performances, and the lively humor that characterized New York City. These experiences laid the foundation for his future career, instilling in him a deep understanding of timing, delivery, and the power of a well-placed joke. Youngman's initial forays into show business were not as a comedian but as a musician. In the 1920s, he formed a small band and performed at various venues around New York City. However, it was during these musical performances that Youngman's talent for humor began to shine through. He would often intersperse his violin playing with witty remarks, much to the delight of the audience. His jokes were spontaneous, sharp, and delivered with a deadpan expression that would become his trademark. The transition from musician to comedian was almost accidental. During one performance, when the other band members were late, Youngman filled the time with jokes and quips, keeping the audience entertained until the show could start. The response was overwhelming, and it became clear that his true calling was not just to play music, but to make people laugh. In the 1930s, Youngman's comedic career began in earnest. He honed his craft in the vaudeville circuits, where he learned the art of captivating an audience with quick, punchy one-liners. Unlike many comedians of his time who relied on elaborate setups and storytelling, Youngman's humor was concise and to the point. His jokes were like verbal snapshots, capturing a moment of absurdity or irony in a single sentence. This style would become his hallmark and would earn him the enduring title of the king of the one-liners. Youngman's big break came when he was invited to perform on The Kate Smith Hour, a popular radio show of the time. His performance was a revelation to listeners, who were captivated by his rapid-fire delivery and the sheer volume of jokes he could pack into a short segment. This appearance catapulted Youngman into the national spotlight, leading to numerous other radio gigs and eventually to television. The 1940s and 1950s were the golden years of Henny Youngman's career. He became a regular on television variety shows, including The Ed Sullivan Show and The Tonight Show, where his quick wit and ability to deliver a punchline with precision made him a favorite among audiences. During this period, Youngman also began performing in nightclubs across the country, solidifying his reputation as a master of live comedy. One of Youngman's most famous lines, "Take my wife, please," became a cultural touchstone, emblematic of his style. The joke, like many of Youngman's quips, was both simple and profound, reflecting the complexities of married life with humor and a touch of irony. It was a line that audiences would repeat, and it became so synonymous with Youngman that it defined his public persona. Yet, behind the laughter, Youngman's life was not without its challenges. The relentless pace of his career, the pressures of constant touring, and the demands of staying relevant in a rapidly changing entertainment landscape all took their toll. But Youngman was nothing if not resilient. He continued to perform, driven by a love for comedy that never waned, even as the world around him evolved. For all his public success, Youngman's personal life was marked by both joy and sorrow. His marriage to Sadie Cohen, whom he married in 1928, was a central part of his life. Sadie, often the subject of his jokes, was much more than a comedic foil. She was his confidant, supporter, and the love of his life. The couple had 2 children, and despite the demands of Youngman's career, he was deeply devoted to his family. Youngman's jokes about his wife were a staple of his act, but they were delivered with a sense of affection and self-deprecation that audiences found endearing. While he often portrayed himself as the beleaguered husband, in reality, his marriage to Sadie was a source of strength. She understood the demands of his career and supported him through the highs and lows. However, the life of a comedian is often a solitary one, filled with late nights, long tours, and the pressure to constantly create new material. Youngman was no exception. He spent much of his time on the road, performing in clubs and theaters far from home. This distance, while necessary for his career, also created a sense of isolation. Yet, Youngman remained committed to his craft, believing that the joy he brought to others was worth the sacrifices. In the 1980s, as Youngman entered his later years, the entertainment industry began to change. The rise of new comedic styles, more observational, more narrative-driven, posed challenges for a performer whose strength lay in quick, punchy jokes. Yet, Youngman's dedication to his style never wavered. He continued to perform, maintaining a busy schedule even as he aged. His audiences may have changed, but the laughter he elicited remained constant. As Youngman aged, the toll of his relentless work ethic began to show. He faced numerous health challenges, including heart disease and other age-related conditions. Despite these difficulties, he refused to slow down. For Youngman, comedy was not just a job, it was a calling, a way of life that he could not abandon, even as his body began to falter. The death of his beloved wife, Sadie, in 1987, marked a profound turning point in Youngman's life. Her passing was a devastating blow, one from which he never fully recovered. Sadie had been his anchor, the person who kept him grounded amidst the chaos of his career. Without her, Youngman found himself adrift, struggling to find the same joy in his work that had once come so easily. In the years following Sadie's death, Youngman continued to perform, but those close to him noticed a change. The man who had once been the life of the party, always quick with a joke, seemed more subdued, more introspective. The jokes were still there, but the laughter that followed was tinged with a sense of melancholy. It was as if Youngman was aware that his time was running out and that the end of his journey was near. Henny Youngman's life came to a close on February 24, 1998, when he passed away at the age of 91. He had been hospitalized with pneumonia, and despite the best efforts of his doctors, his condition worsened. The comedy world mourned the loss of one of its brightest stars, a man who had dedicated his life to making others laugh. Youngman's death marked the end of an era. He was one of the last great comedians of a bygone age, a performer whose style and sensibilities were rooted in the traditions of vaudeville and early television. His passing was not just the loss of a comedian but the loss of a cultural icon, a man whose jokes had become part of the fabric of American entertainment. In the days following his death, tributes poured in from around the world. Fellow comedians, many of whom had been inspired by Youngman's work, spoke of his generosity, his kindness, and his unwavering commitment to his craft. They remembered a man who, despite his success, never lost sight of what was most important, making people